Hello, and welcome to Fresh Blood, a podcast about killing it after 40, where we prove that new blood does not necessarily equal young blood. Here to discuss what it takes to have continued success through life, I'll be your host, Jolie Downs. With over 20 years of executive recruiting experience, I've learned how much we can grow and be inspired by other people's stories. I'm excited to share that with you here on Fresh Blood. Today, we are talking with Suzy Vadori. Suzy is a former vice president of operations and marketing who started writing by night. Eventually, her debut fantasy novel, The Fountain, became a finalist for an award, and Suzy decided to take a leap into all things writing. Once she made the jump, Suzy continued to write, becoming a best-selling author of the Fountain series, and she found she had a knack for helping other writers follow their dreams. Suzy has since become an editor, public speaker, and an author Accelerator advanced certified book coach, helping countless writers take their writing to the next level. I am excited to learn more. Suzy, could you please tell us a bit more about your journey to getting where you are today?
Oh, hi, Jolie. Thank you so much for having me on your show today. I'm really excited to be here and talk about my journey because it has been such an unusual one, and I love to share, and I hope that people get something out of it. So, as you said, I always had a dream to write a book, and I meet so many people out there that always think that they're going to write a book. And so I finally sat down. This is crazy, right? I wrote lots of half books as a teenager. And then I went off and became a business executive. I had a very successful 20-year career in business. I worked on Wall Street. I became a vice president operations or chief operating officer at a couple of different companies in technology and manufacturing and did all kinds of things. But I still had this kind of niggly thing in the back of my head, like I want to write a book. And so on maternity leave with my third child in Canada, I live in Canada, and we get a year off. And I didn't take it with my first two, but I did with my third. And I finally sat down and I wrote a book that became The Fountain, and that series just took off. And so by the time I did go back to work, and by the time I published the second book, I started being asked to speak and teach and write and edit and do all these other things. And I loved it. And I was taking all these days off. And about 3 years ago in the spring, it was April, and my husband and I both had pretty important jobs, and important at the time, it felt like, right?
Yes.
And we were comparing schedules because scheduling with 3 kids and everything, our schedules are crazy. We both traveled. At the time, I was traveling to China every quarter and managing manufacturing facilities over there. And so we're comparing schedules, and I'm like, I need to take 7 days off in April alone to go and do stuff I've been asked to do as an author. and I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to take vacation days and I'm going to go work as an author on these days. Like I'd been doing it kind of here and there, but it all came to a head, and he was looking at me going, what are you doing? You can't be spending your vacation days working on another job. Like maybe it's time to take a look. And yeah, so then I did. And those 7 days a month became all the days in the month. And now I've gone through a few iterations, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But making a living as a creative person, you have to be creative about it. And that's been a lot of fun.
Now, what was it like for you to make that leap, though? Because that's very scary. You were in the corporate world for a long time, holding this type of role, and you went for it. So what was it like in that beginning for you? How did you get through that time?
Terrifying. Yeah, it was terrifying. As I mentioned, I've been a chief operating officer for, the last decade of my career, role that vice president operations. And what that role really is, as you probably know, but for the listeners, what that role really is, because people are like, what is operations? You're really the support, right? So there's the CEO, and you work with entrepreneurs, and I'm the support. So whatever they need, wherever their strengths aren't, that's where I jump in and lead and help and support. And so I always thought that I would be that supporting role forever. And I mean, I love entrepreneurs. I've worked with many of them. And if any of them ever listen to this, I hope they're really proud. But entrepreneurs have that certain crazy leap of faith. And sometimes they'll say to me, Suzy, I hear what you're saying. I know your experience. I hear you, but I just got this feeling and I want to do it anyway. And so I just kind of you're always cleaning up that mess after, and you have to do that. I respect and admire CEOs beyond belief because they take that leap of faith, and sometimes it works. And if nobody ever did that, So I always thought of myself as a very conservative person, that I'm the one that's going to make sure and be certain and all those things. So that leap for me was very strange, to find myself at this precipice where I was like, hey, I finally can see what my job as a CEO would, because I always thought I was just going to be in the background because I couldn't take that risk, or I wouldn't take that risk, because I've seen a lot of success in my career, but a lot of failure too. And yeah, so it was especially scary for me because I didn't think that I would ever do that. And I've seen so much of the bad, or so much of the consequences, that it was, terrifying.
How did you get over that fear?
I did a number of things as only an operations person can.
Like
For
this.
me, it wasn't really a flying leap of faith. So I mentioned that I was already doing a lot of these things on the side. And so my plan, as I always have a plan. So my plan at the time was to build up those sort of side gigs until they were equal to, or somewhat equal to, my day job in terms of income. And then I could make the leap without worrying about it. That's insane. That's impossible. I was a mom to 3 kids, and we have a busy family life and a social life and all kinds of other things. And I was literally working every evening and every weekend to try to do this. And as I said, I was getting a day here or there of work and taking vacation days off. So I had this plan, and then it became untenable for my family, really. So what ended up happening was a perfect storm of things. There was the moment in April when I had 7 offers or 7 tours, like 7 days of work to do. And then there was also a couple of CEOs, 2 different CEOs that I'd worked with in the past, that called me around that same time and said, I'm starting something new. I worked in startups. It's super fun. I'm starting something new. I can't afford you full time, but I would love to get you 1 day a week or whatever. So I couched it a little bit. I was able to do that. And so for the first year, I cobbled it together, consulting part-time and then building up that. But then at the end of the year, even though that was going well, I found I wanted to do less and less of the consulting. I just wasn't as interested as I was in building my own business. So I was very fortunate. A lot of signs from the universe came together and allowed me to make that leap until it was fully transitioned. So.
And what a blessing to find such a passion later on in life and be able to go after it.
Amazing. And I say this to people all the time, who say that they want to write a book. You don't know what I thought, that I would write a book and still maintain my life. Some people do, but it just took over in terms of all the opportunity that I saw and the doors that opened for me, both as a human and an operations professional. Is a very cold cut job. It's not particularly emotional to evaluate how much money you're making and how efficient you are, to this other completely different creative outlet that has just completely changed my life and my family's life.
That's amazing. That's wonderful. Yeah. So out of all the things that you've done in your life, which you clearly have done a lot, both in the corporate world, personally, writing, helping other writers, what do you feel has been your greatest success, and what did you learn from it?
Oh goodness, that's a tough one.
A couple.
yeah, that's a really tough one. It's tricky because I talk about writing a lot of half books, and I never really realized that writing could be a job. And so I went and did what was practical. But I don't think necessarily if I become a writer right out of school, I would definitely not have the career that I have now. Mm-hmm. I think the most successful thing, or the most surprising thing to me, is the relationships and the community that I've been able to build with writers. And that's where a lot of these things that I'm doing now have stemmed out of. My book coaching practice is so busy that I've had the opportunity to create online courses and reach more people. And so I'm finding ways to reach as many people as I can. And I don't know if it's the most successful, but I think as a personal thing, just being vulnerable out there and sharing what I know and putting myself out there, which is hard. And I know it doesn't look hard, maybe to people on the outside. But it's hard, and you've got this show, and it's hard to put yourself out there. And I worried a lot about being criticized by people who've been there longer, or for people, because it happens, and that really hasn't happened. In fact, I've managed to just follow my own sword and say, here's what I know and here's what I'm learning. And so the community that I've been able to build and the network of writers and the people that I've been able to help really is my greatest success. And that's what I'm leading into as we move into this year.
That's wonderful. And I'm sure that I'm sure that network was incredibly comforting, I would imagine, during the past year. What was it like for you during this past year, during the pandemic?
So good question. Really, I've had to reinvent my business this year.
Oh, how so?
And
Interesting.
so it's been actually a different question, but I will answer it. So the thing is that leading into the pandemic, I had really been, as I mentioned, I'd been asked to speak. So I had conferences lined up and personal appearances where I
Mhm.
go and meet with the public, meet with readers. I had school tours booked. So I do a lot of touring up here in Canada. I tour our province. Sometimes I'm driving 10, 12 hours away, and then you stay up there for a week and do a bunch of schools. And those are corporately sponsored tours. So yeah, I love, love, love being out and meeting with readers. It's something that I really figured out early on that I wanted to do. And you talk about writing and you talk about your own story and your own books and you share those things. And so leading into the pandemic in the spring of 2020, I was 2 years into being a full-time author, and I had a lot booked between young writers conferences and conferences for adults, the Comic Cons that I teach, like that I speak at and appear
Also
at.
exciting. Oh, it must have been
Yeah, like
crazy
tons of stuff, and it's hard work, right? Because there's to build a life
to
as a
build up to that.
creative. There's a million avenues, and so I finally felt like I got this, right? I was booked out 5 months solid for speaking,
Wow. Oh, that's
and
exciting.
I was like, all right, this is awesome.
I made it. Yeah.
And and then the
Crush.
pandemic. So
Yeah.
it just started disappearing like pow. And so spring of 2020 was an interesting time because everybody was still trying to reschedule. We thought it would be 2 weeks or four
Yeah.
weeks or whatever. So what was happening was gigs that I already had booked or that were regular gigs, people were asking you to repropose for. So when you get something like this, it's work. You have to say, what are you going to do? And how are you going to do it? And why should we choose you? And all these things. You propose to appear at these events.
Hmm.
And so I'd done it once and then it was canceled. And then they were moving online and I had to pitch again. And then some were canceled outright, some moved online. But then the online, instead of go up north for a week, you're going to the classroom for an hour online and you're being paid a lot less. Like it was just a completely different scene.
Hmm.
And I just wasn't getting, so I was winning a lot of this work and doing a lot of online presentations. And I wasn't getting the energy from it that I love about being in person.
Yeah.
And so I found it very difficult.
Hmm.
And yeah, so that's when I'd been eyeing this. I've been book coaching for a few years with a few clients because people are always asking for help and I love to help. But I found that work very time consuming and I wasn't sure how to scale. And I'd been eyeing this program with Jenny Nash's Author Accelerator for a couple of years. Like I was aware of it and I was participating in some of it and I've had some interactions with Jenny. And so I leaned into that and I went out and I got my coaching certification for two reasons. The number one reason was to just let people in my network that I mentioned, to let them know that I was available for this work. And
Hmm.
the second reason was to figure out how the heck do you scale this?
Right.
And so I got both of those out of that certification, which I earned it took me about 6 months. And now, yeah, and then last summer I put out new packages for book coaching and then I was full within a month, which I
Wonderful.
wasn't expecting.
That's
And then I had to
amazing.
turn around again and find ways to actually reach more people and scale my business. And so that's when I started creating online courses. And so I launched in the spring of 2021 for the first time my Wicked Good Fiction Bootcamp, which is everything that you get in coaching, but
Hmm.
in a group setting. And it was so much fun. I'm going to run it again this fall in 2021.
That's wonderful. What great pivots you made during this time and just added to your overall repertoire of what your offerings. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to. And like I said, my business background has certainly helped. But yeah, keep going because gosh forbid, I do not want to go back to working full time at a corporate job.
Yeah. But you say
Not
you
at this
have to.
time. So I'm like, I will do anything. I will do anything. I'll figure this out.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'll go back to what I was doing before. Like I like this so much better. So I am still doing some of the regular things that are starting to come back. But I think if this keeps going, then I'll let some of that go.
Hmm. Isn't that amazing? We just keep finding things that make us happier and more fulfilled. Doesn't
Yeah,
matter how old we are or where we are. There's always ways for us to grow and expand and find new joy.
absolutely. I am not done yet.
No, me either. What about the flip side of this process? What about a time that you failed or had perceived failure, had or dealt with a big obstacle, a huge challenge, made a big mistake, and what did you learn from it?
Well, there's lots of things. You talk about pivoting, and people only see what ends up being the result. But you got to
Right.
try a lot of things. You got to kiss a lot of frogs to figure out which one's
True
your friend.
story.
So I don't know that I would call them failures, because really they're opportunities, and not just to be rah rah, but I'm always a positive person. But there are opportunities for learning for sure. But I think what's been really interesting is, especially going into the online space, there aren't many people in the writing world doing what I'm doing. There are other book coaches and there are people off online courses, but there's nobody quite doing it in the practical way that I'm doing, like giving people exact information that they need to write a book that's compelling to readers. It's a very different tact, but I haven't found, like, there's no business model to copy and there's no person that can tell me how to do this in the right way. So yeah, there've been a lot of failures, or not failures, but I've tried a lot of different things, and some of them work and some of them don't. And I've followed advice from lots of the gurus in the online space, and some of it just doesn't work with writers, and it doesn't feel right to me. Like, I'm not a salesy person. Like I said, it's about the connections. And so I think I give away a lot more advice for free, or make those connections and listen to people's stories in a way that other people don't. But I think it's turned out to be a blessing,
It
right?
pays off for you.
Yeah, in the
Yeah.
end. Or it does, or it doesn't, but I like it. It's okay. It's not always about the payoff.
It pays off in different ways. It pays off.
Mhm.
Oh, it's feeding your soul. And honestly, when you turn and start looking at how you can help others, what I've found from doing this podcast and story after story is that's how you help yourself. Really helping others is, it all comes back to you in one way or another. It's coming back. So it's where the true success seems to happen, is that shift in thought process from how can I help myself to how can I help others. Although you have to get to the point where you've helped yourself and are fully embodied until you can go out there and help others too.
Yeah, and I think too, it's about, as I get older, I feel like I'm an old grandma now, but as I get older, I find too, I'm more comfortable in my own skin. As a woman working on Wall Street in the mid 90s, you're being someone else. And I did a good job of doing that. You keep getting promoted and then you keep getting promoted. And I know when I was a director at TELUS when I was pregnant with my first child, who just turned 15. But I can remember I had a really clear life plan and all these things, but you realize how disconnected that is from your executive sort of persona. When I announced that I was pregnant, people were very worried.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
People actually, I had a colleague pull me aside who is also a mom, and she said, was this planned?
Yeah.
Like, in other words, they were horrified for
Yeah.
me because they assumed that I was a career woman that didn't want children, because that's what I projected. That couldn't have been further from the truth. My husband and I have been together 25 years. We had a plan. That was exactly the moment. We were lucky that we were able to plan. I know that we're very fortunate that we were able to do that. But yeah, it was quite shocking to me that people thought that sort of hard persona, that business person that I was, that was extremely efficient, that continued to get promoted, that got everything done that needed to get done, was actually me. And it's not, right? And so as I build my own business, I'm very aware to just let myself be myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard as as I said earlier, it's hard when you put yourself out there as a public persona. It's hard to also feel really genuine about that and make sure that you're not projecting something that isn't real or better than real.
It's an interesting dichotomy, right? Because you're trying to be successful in one realm, but if you're not really embodying who you are and being allowed to be authentic, can it really be success?
Yeah. And to be fair, I don't think anybody ever told me I couldn't be myself, but I know I would not have enjoyed the type of financial and promotional success.
I was going to interject there. Maybe no one told you that you couldn't, but society has taught us. Society was telling you all around what you needed to do. I'm curious, as a woman in the 90s on Wall Street, what were some of the bigger life lessons, takeaways that you got from that experience?
Oh, I could go all day. So to clarify, so in that role, I worked for investment banks on Wall Street. Mm-hmm. And I worked for a company that built software for them.
Mhm.
So I had the opportunity to go in and out of different banks. But in that job, I actually still lived in Canada. I lived in Toronto, Canada, and I commuted every Monday morning by plane to my job in New York City. It was an insane time in my life. It was fantastic. I think it was, you're living the life. I was in a hotel, which was completely paid for, everything. You have no expenses. So there were some good things about it, but we worked hard. Like, you work till midnight and you don't go in till 9 a.m. because that's when the market's open. But it was a hard lifestyle and it was amazing. But I did look around at some of the, particularly men, there were no women that had families that worked with me, but some of the men that had families that worked with me, they had 4 kids at home. And I just thought, okay, I'm not going to be able to do this forever because that's not what
Yeah.
so I knew that there was a finite amount of time. In my 20s, I could do it. I can't even imagine now. Like, my plane used to land at 7:30 at night, and I'd meet my friends for dinner at 8 every Friday night. And now, as a mom of 3 and in my mid 40s, I'm going, wow, how did I ever do that? But I think it was amazing. There was a lot of life lessons. It was a great time to work hard and to learn so much about business and to learn so much about people and to really enjoy myself and to decide that I didn't want to do that after I had kids. And so I had to eventually figure out how to do that.
Yeah. That's important too, figuring out the lifestyle that you want to live and get that. Yeah. Which isn't always something that you're thinking about in your 20s either. So that's great that you were being able to recognize that at a younger age.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think is key to having continued success throughout life?
Continued success throughout life. Just take those moments to step back and say, is this really what I want to do? If nothing else, the pandemic, the silver lining of the pandemic for everybody that I've spoken to, almost to, I can't think of anybody who would say otherwise, is that it made them stop what they were doing and really evaluate. And either they miss it and they want to jump right back in, but sometimes we're so busy doing like busy work or doing what we think we're supposed to be doing. Those moments of reflection are amazing. I've been very fortunate. I said, even though I didn't take my full maternity leave that I'm entitled to here in Canada for my first 2, because I worked for small companies and they really couldn't afford to have their COO be gone that long. It didn't make sense. And I knew I was going to have more children soon. Like, it's a lot to take a year. I did still have, I think I took 10 months and then 8 months, quite a lot of time to reconnect and be home. And those moments, this pandemic was almost like a maternity leave for a lot of people, like the first time that they've ever been home more and been with family more and had to make hard decisions and take a step back. And I hope that people incorporate that into their daily life and keep evaluating what is it that you want to do and where do you want to be next instead of just focused on day to day.
Agree. We're not asking ourselves the right questions often enough. Because you're right. We're too many of us. We're existing. We are doing our best to just get through each day rather than asking how we really want to get through the day.
Yeah.
So that's really good advice. I'm curious, is there any advice that you'd give someone who's in the 40 plus category who might be struggling right now to either find their right path or the right next opportunity, just in that mode of figuring it out?
Yeah, you really have to balance, because sometimes that comes about from need for fulfillment, but sometimes it comes about from financial need for lots of reasons as well. So you really have to balance those two things. When I first started saying that maybe I was thinking about writing full time, and my husband was totally on board and that's great, but we'll just have to make a bunch of lifestyle changes. If you're going to be a starving artist, we're going to have to give some stuff up. That was his take on it. And I was saying, no, I don't plan to be a starving artist. I'm going to blow this industry up. I don't plan to starve. I'm going to make money. What are you talking about? So I think it's just not settling, and don't just take the job that is going to pay the bills. Figure out how to incorporate it, and don't sell yourself short, because if you think you're only going to make $20 an hour for the rest of your life, you are. Look for the opportunities that are going to allow you to be flexible, but also allow you to scale your business indefinitely. Because I think that a lot of people, especially if they were in a career for a long time or didn't have a career, maybe they've been home for a while and then decided once their kids are older that they'd like to have a job, they really just limit themselves to what they think they can make per hour.
Yes.
And I think one of the ways that you can structure a business around that is not being paid hourly, but what are the big wins that you can actually do? So yeah, don't set your sights too low.
Yes, I agree. And like you said, with when you have to find a job because you're financial,
Yeah.
it makes me think of this give or take, if you will. My son, I was trying to get him to get a job. He needs to go get a job. And
Yeah.
this is different. He doesn't have a family to support or anything, but just the conversation that I had with him stuck with me because I'm giving him all these suggestions of different places to go find a job. And he stopped. He's like, Mom, I'm not just going to go get a job to get a job. And I was like, excuse me. That's what you do. You need to say, no, I'm going to get a job, but one that is going to put me in the right direction of where I want to be. So I'm going to find a job that is in the right area of where it can lead me somewhere. And it's beautiful. That's a
Yeah.
lesson.
You can't argue with that.
Fantastic that you've got that. Good job. Good job. That's
I
exactly.
would caveat to say where he thinks he wants to be. You
Exactly.
might find, but the earlier you find out that's not where you want to be, the better, right?
Oh, 100%. Yes, because at a young age, let's be real, we don't know. I'm going to be honest. I talk to many people in their 40s, 50s who still don't know what they want to do because they haven't spent the time to really dive deep and figure it out. Because
Yeah.
let's be honest, that's the world that
And
we live in.
I think that's something that the next generation is going to get. I
I
really do. I don't think they're going to put up with
I
what we
agree.
put up with. Even working with millennials, and then I've got two teenagers and a tween, and they say things like, my son, my 13-year-old, he said to me recently, yeah, no, I don't want to be a writer. I'm like, why not? Why don't you want to be a writer? Because I see you sitting at your computer all day long, and I don't want a job like that. Like, we didn't really think about things like that.
Yeah.
I love it. I don't notice. I
Yeah,
sit
no,
down.
it fits you, but it's exactly that. And like you said, working with millennials, you can see the differences. And then the next generation coming up, they're not willing to put up with so much
No.
that we did. And I
Yeah.
applaud that. So
Me too.
change is
But how do
happening.
you find it after 40? I think maybe that's a good example, right?
Yeah. And that's it. Finding after 40, it is, you know what? It's harder. Let me rephrase. It's not harder. It's just that our lives are so busy and full that we
So
don't take the
set.
time to do it. It's exactly what you said, your advice. You need to take the time to sit with yourself, take everyone's stories away, and listen to your own voice.
Yeah. And I
And
think the other thing that I would add to that is around the don't limit yourself. Nobody ever told me that being a writer could be a job. Oh, yes, sure, you'll write a book one day, but get a job. And I think in today's world, the cool thing is you can make a job out of anything. Out
yes,
of anything. And that's one thing that I love counseling people on because of my background in business. Like if they tell me they love to paint, I could probably make a business out of that somehow for them. Now, some people don't want to do that because it takes the joy out of it for them. That's different. But if you want to make a living doing what you love, I bet there's a way. So get creative because other people probably want to learn to do what you love, or other people probably, there's so many different ways to make a living depending on what you want to do.
you are 100% right. Absolutely. And too often we forget that. And the world is different now. So we need to open our eyes to the fact that the world is different and all of these opportunities are surrounding us.
Yeah. The one thing I love to do when I tour schools is I bring with me this baby book that my mom had bought me. It's from the 70s. And it's this like every year you put in schoolwork and you put in who your new friends are, what your classroom and all this stuff. And then it's got this little section and it says, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Oh, yeah.
And it's got a section for boys and it's got a section for girls. And the options for girls were teacher, secretary, it's horrifying, right? And I would write in, every year I wrote in something different. I want to be a doctor. I want to be an author. I want to be, I was always writing in something different. But yeah, by the time I graduated grade 12 in the early 90s, that book was woefully out of date. And thank goodness.
Yes, thank goodness.
Yeah.
Thank goodness. So I appreciate
Right?
all the change that has been happening in that.
Yes, I appreciate it also. I hope that our children benefit from it.
Yeah. So I'm curious, what is something that you've learned personally that you feel has brought the most benefit to your life?
I think over the years, I've really learned to be less of a perfectionist.
That's a good
I
one.
think that, I actually have two answers for this now that I think about it. So being less of a perfectionist and being able to just see when things are good enough has allowed me to manage huge projects, like huge companies, huge projects, And without that ability to know when things are just good enough and to let go, I would never have been able to accomplish what I've accomplished, including in the business that I run now. And then the second thing is communication skills.
Big.
And again, this is something that I do keynotes at schools about. It's like how just learning to read and write is not about being in the classroom and that literacy and mastering that skill. So when you learn to write stories in the classroom, people think it's just to appease your English teacher, but actually that storytelling ability is helpful in marketing, it's helpful in persuasion, it's helpful in negotiation. And that ability, and this is an interesting one, as we go forward and that next generation coming up, people think that we're going away from the written word. Think about it. How do our kids actually communicate with their friends? They text. Right? And so the written word has become even more important. Spelling's less important because computers will do that for you. But kids these days and people growing, even people our age who are learning to communicate in the digital world, if you don't have strong written communication skills, you're going to have a problem because people are going to misconstrue. I mean, who hasn't gotten a text that they misunderstood and got mad at, texted somebody and they're all mad because they think it means something else? Like those skills, I credit with everything I've accomplished in life because I can communicate clearly, I can put it down, and people know exactly what I'm talking about. It saves oodles of time and hurt and heartache.
Completely agree. It doesn't matter what industry or job you're in, communication skills are key. And really, the future direction of where we're going is just going to get more and more important to have strong communication skills.
Yeah, and I think that people think it's less. And
Yeah.
I don't, because you have you don't have people's attention, you don't have people's time. So you better make it succinct and you better make it right.
Completely agree. Yes. And going back, I'm just curious because I realized there's a lot of people who are moving through the corporate ranks right now, and they're trying to move up to the next level. Since you successfully managed to continuously get promoted throughout those ranks to CEO level, is there any advice that you would give someone as far as the best way to present yourself so that you're continuously moving up through those ranks? Is there anything that you did that you felt helped you?
Absolutely. Yeah. 100 things. No. You know what the biggest thing is, and I've had the opportunity to manage large teams as large as 200. And so to coach them is just to really start doing the job that you want, not just the job that you've got. I like to talk about when I had somebody from HR, actually, they gave us a speech once that I've used so many times. I use it in schools. I use it with my own kids. And it's about envisioning a plank. And if you're ranked out of 4, like I say this to my kids about their schoolwork, if you put the plank on the ground, you're going to walk that plank. It's going to be pretty easy and you're going to get 1 out of 4 because you did it. Good job. You did it. And if you put it between 2 chairs and you put that plank up, and then you might do it. It's a little bit harder. You might get a 2. And then you put it on 2 ladders and then you put it on the ceiling. And whoever's willing to walk on the ceiling, what it takes to get that extra part. And if you just sit around and complain about not getting promoted, just go and do the extra work. That's my advice, right? Do the job that you want and start showing people how you can already do it so that it's easy for them to envision it and so that your learning curve is less steep when you get there. That doesn't mean kill yourself and work around the clock. It just means be smart about it and go that extra mile. So that time that you might have spent complaining, maybe spend doing a little bit of extra to help the people around you.
I want to applaud that answer. Yes, that's perfect advice.
It's like a visualization, right? It's not like you don't know. If you're sitting there and there's somebody beside you who keeps getting promoted, and you're bitter, it's not you. Hopefully it's not nepotism or some other reason, but hopefully it's because they are actually putting in that extra work and they are going that extra mile. Yeah. But if you don't want to do, that's fine, but you won't get promoted.
You're not going to get promoted.
Accept that.
Exactly. Exactly.
And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. There's people who are actually comfortable doing the same job for a very long period of time, and then they find their fulfillment elsewhere in their life, and there's nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah. No, nothing at all. It's just a matter of having that balance in your life, so you're getting all the different things that you need to fulfill. Yeah. So now, what about habits? Are there any specific habits that you have developed for yourself that you feel help make you successful?
Oh my goodness. How many times? I was a consultant in the mid-90s. 7 Habits is secondhand. And that's what is that? Stephen Covey's 7 Habits and the magic quadrant. But habits, I think, again, really time management is a skill that's really important when you're running your own business, because it can be, especially an online business. I have a Facebook group that I support people. I could spend all day in there supporting people, but I try to time box it. So I use time blocking and making, I have very strong, I have a bullet journal with lists and check boxes, and I feel really good. Sometimes I write something down that I already did just so I could check it off. Yeah, of course. You gotta be like, what did I do with my day? But yeah, I have very strong habits. I have a journal with to-do lists, because there's a lot of moving parts to running your own business or to creating a new career. It can be really disorienting. It really helps me manage a lot more things all at once, and having a very detailed schedule of what I plan to do things allows me, especially as a book coach and editor, not to overcommit. I had a circumstance this week where I had somebody ask me for a coaching package. It was to help them with a query letter, which is when you're submitting a book. And I had told her, I gave her a date 3 weeks out. And I said, hey, this is when I can do this package. And she was like, great. And then 2 weeks ago, and that was today. And 2 weeks ago, she's, hey, I'm done early. Can you do it early? And I'm like, I looked at my schedule. I said, well, you can send it early, but I can't see where I could fit it in, but I'll try. And I did try, but I couldn't, because I'm so down to the minute in terms of that. And then at 6 o'clock, I'm 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, depending on the day, I'm done work and I'm off with my family. Great. So I don't try to cram things in anymore. I try to be really realistic, understand how long it takes me to do something and not overcommit. And that means that my editing schedule currently is booked out 3 months, but it just is what it is, right?
It's fantastic, though. You're living your best life.
I'm trying.
So I obviously, being a writer, you read a lot. I'm curious, are there any books or even a talk or video that has had a really big impact on your life that you think others would benefit from?
There are a million books, but a lot of them are really specific to writing. So I think your audience is more general. What I would say is I point people to Simon Sinek a lot. He talks about your why, and he's got a TED Talk it's called How Great Leaders Inspire Action, but it's really about finding your why in your business. Mm-hmm. And even though I'd used that in business before, it means so much more now from a marketing perspective. When I was marketing things and trying to come up with ad campaigns, let's come up with a why for the company. And it's this more shallow interpretation of it. Mm-hmm. When you look at that, if you want to watch the video, it's only 18 minutes long. You can just Google Simon Sinek why. If you think about it in the context of that book that you want to write or that business that you want to do, it's all about how we talk about what you want to do. I want to write a book, and how am I going to write a book? I'm maybe going to hire a book coach, or I'm going to do it on my own, or I'm going to get a ghostwriter to write it, or however you decide to do it. But the why is often skipped. And if you can connect with your why of doing things, that's where the motivation comes in. And that's where everything it's such an eye opener. I have people I talk to people all the time that I send away to do that, and they come back and tell me, oh my gosh, I've been writing this book for 6 years, and I had no idea that I was actually writing my own story. Mm-hmm. I'm writing about dragons. I'm writing about high school. I'm writing about somebody completely that I thought was a totally different story, and I just realized that I'm working through something that happened to me. Yeah. It's an amazing exercise. So I think that one is a game changer, and I watch it when I start a new project. I'll think about it again and really try to connect with that. And if you don't have a strong why, don't do it.
Exactly.
Do something else.
Yep. This is a recurring theme as well. Knowing your why is.
Yeah. Sorry, it's a bit pedantic, but it's true, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's such a simple concept and probably not unique, but.
No, that's perfect. Now, so as far as the listeners go, if anyone's interested in contacting you, are you taking on new clients at this point?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Absolutely.
Your website, is there anything else that the listeners should know where to find you?
You know what? Come and find me in our Facebook group. We just started it this summer, actually, just about a month ago, and it is a lively discussion. If you are looking to write a book, or you're trying to write a book, or you've already written books, we have a super supportive group of writers, and it's called Inspired Writing. So if you just plug that into Facebook, and I can send you the link to include. Come join me. I have a weekly vlog that I also do with writing tips.
Great.
And so there's all kinds of stuff, but the central place that I'm hanging out these days and supporting people is through that Facebook group. And so you can find me there and talk one-on-one also with the group there and get some support for your writing project and figure out how to work with me. And then
Fantastic.
again, in the fall, there'll be the Wicked Good Fiction Boot Camp is going to be running again. I'm super excited to run that again because it was such a blast. We had a great group of writers in the spring and just the amazing things that came out of it for them. It's just totally worth doing for me.
When are you doing signups for that?
The signups will, again, the information is on my website, but
Perfect.
signups for that will open in September. So the program doesn't start until September 20th. And we'll be running a few things up, like there'll be a challenge and some webinars and things that you guys can do for free leading up to that to see if it's a good fit.
Perfect. And we'll make sure we have all those links in the show notes for listeners.
Awesome.
So before we go, I'd love to ask you my final question. What are you sure of in life?
Oh my goodness. What am I sure of in life? You know what? I am sure that I am doing what I am meant to be doing. Oh. And I couldn't have said that 10 years ago.
That gave me chills. I love that.
Yeah, I couldn't have said that 10 years ago. I am every day when I wake up, and some of the things along the way, some of the stuff today, right before this, I was doing invoicing. I hate doing and I do have an assistant that does some of it, but I have to at least prepare what it is that she's supposed to be doing. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Suzy. This has been a wonderful talk.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the work that you do in helping people discover what it is that they're meant to be doing too.
Thank you. I found Suzy's story incredibly inspiring. Suzy always had a dream to write a book, writing many half books as a teenager. As she entered the working age, she put that dream to the side and took a corporate role, becoming very good at what she did. Suzy moved her way up the ranks all the way to the C-level upper echelon, holding COO or Chief Operating Officer roles. For so many, this is the ultimate goal. But Suzy had this niggling feeling that desire to write a book had never left her. When she had time at home during a maternity leave, Suzy finally satisfied that itch and wrote her first book, which became a success and eventually led to a series. The success of her writing snowballed until it became time for her to make the leap into all things writing. I love this. I love that Suzy did not let that dream die and that she found the time to fulfill the fantasy that began so long ago. What was your dream? What fantasy did you have that over the years you have let go? What would happen if you revisited that desire? For Suzy, it led to an entirely new career, one in which has led to speaking engagements, conferences, coaching, online programs, and the creation of a new writing community. I can't say what would happen if you were to pick up that forgotten dream, but I can tell you that at the very least, you will bring more joy, energy, and vibrancy into your life. And anytime you raise your energy in such a positive way, good things follow. Remember, Suzy did not just jump from a well-established role. She built this passion of hers into a career on the side. Even with the busiest of schedules, you can carve time out of your week to focus on you and your dreams. You owe yourself this. Mentally think about an hour you can schedule each week just for yourself and reacquaint yourself with your long-lost wishes. They could be anything. I appreciated that Suzy shared how terrifying it was for her making that leap. Many people will not take a risk because they think, that's just not me. I'm just not that type. Suzy is a perfect example that there is no type. It is just about what you want and what feels right for you. Suzy never thought she had it in her to be an entrepreneur, to make those decisions, to take those big risks. But when it came to her passion, when she knew her why, she found she was able to do all of those things. And you can too. The only thing holding you back is the belief that you cannot do it. I want you to know you can. Anyone can. It simply requires making the decision and following it up with persistent action. Taking a step in that direction every day or even every week to begin with. As Suzy suggested, get in touch with your own why. People may ask, what does this mean? It means knowing why you want to do something. What are your motivating factors? Why are you doing what you are doing? When you understand the why behind your actions, it brings everything into focus and gives you a great deal of clarity. It will help you deflect from procrastination, overcommitting, and all the other forms of self-sabotage. Understanding your why allows you to move towards your goals with more energy and ease. If you do not know your purpose, then finding out your personal why can help you figure that out. Here are some questions to ask yourself to help you get more in touch with your own purpose. What makes you come alive? What are your personal strengths? Where do you add the greatest value? And how will you measure your life? Knowing the answers to these questions will help lead you to discovering new and inspiring opportunities as you move forward in life. Which goes along with Suzy's advice for anyone feeling stuck at the moment. She suggests taking time to sit with yourself, remove the self-limiting beliefs, strip away everyone else's story, and listen to your own voice. What do I really want to do? Incorporate this into your daily life. Keep asking yourself, is this what I really want to be doing? Is this serving me and my purpose? And when the answer is yes, this is what I want to be doing, followed up with why? These are the consistent questions you need to go from existing to really living. I love that for Suzy, her greatest success is the community and relationships she has built with writers. It's the help she gives others that fills her up. And I promise you, this is true in life with whatever you do. I appreciate that Suzy shared how hard it was to put herself out there, because it really is. It's incredibly hard. You feel vulnerable and you worry about being criticized. I know I felt the same way when I was starting my podcast. It's hard, but it is so worth it. And knowing my why and Suzy knowing her why is what gives you the correct focus to move forward past the vulnerability. There is growth and power that comes from feeling that vulnerability and moving forward anyway. Sharing yourself with others allows them to open up and do the same. It is one of life's greatest teachers, both for yourself and for those around you. Being vulnerable with others brings connection and understanding, and we all need more of this in our lives. Next time you are holding yourself back in fear of putting yourself out there, take Nike's advice and just do it. I'd also like to point out that it was the challenge of the pandemic that led to Suzy making the pivot to get a coaching license, starting her coaching business, creating online programs, and building this community that has become one of her greatest successes. As they say, in every crisis, there is opportunity. You just have to find it. So what's your crisis right now? Where can you find the opportunity. Suzy had excellent advice for those looking to climb the corporate ladder. She suggests that you simply start doing the job you want, not only the job you have. Start doing the extra work to show people that you are ready for the transition. The decision makers need to be able to envision you in the role. If you start taking some of those up-leveled responsibilities voluntarily, that vision will make itself clear. Successful people are not sitting around wasting their time being bitter and complaining about their work or their boss's decisions. They are busy taking action and doing what is needed to get to the next level. If you want to make it up the ladder, you need to go the extra mile. Suzy's habits were all great to note as well. The keeping a detailed schedule and planning out your day in advance are huge productivity hacks. Being trained as a recruiter, one of the requirements is that you plan your day the night before. Before you leave your desk, you would have the day's plan, call lists, and schedule all set and ready to go because this boosts productivity immensely. When I started my own business, I admit I began to slack on that daily planning, and the result was felt in a very big way, which was remedied. Taking the time to plan the day the night before is an amazing success tool. I've extended this to life in general, visualizing before bed how the next day will look if everything went perfectly, with work, with my family, and with my personal wants. These practices lead to smoother days. It's a wonderful life tool. I suggest you give it a try. Finally, I absolutely loved what Suzy was sure of in life. That she is doing what she is meant to be doing. And that is my wish for us all, that you feel the same happy satisfaction with what you are doing in life. And if you don't, that you will make a promise to yourself right now to find it. Until next time. Thank you for joining us on Fresh Blood. Subscribe and follow us on all streaming services, including Apple Podcasts, Amazon, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Player FM. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Fresh Blood Podcast. If you liked today's episode, please consider giving us a like and sharing with a friend. I hope you make today a most fulfilling day.